Browns 0-8 at home. Just sad.
I haven't heard you this down since Dr. Brown got fired. It's a game that we were in, and it's a game that we just don't finish.
I don't want to watch anymore.
Why? Why does that happen? I'm so sick of watching those plays.
0-16.
I definitely do not want to watch it all 22.
That's up and down to me. That looks like dysfunction. This is Surviving the Season, episode 3 of Season 3. We are back very quickly after the last podcast to talk about Corey Coleman. I'm Adam. Greg's here.
Yo, what is up?
Coleman was shipped off to Buffalo last night for a 2027th round pick.
Not just any pick, a conditional 7th rounder. Same thing I believe Kessler was shipped off for.
Yeah. Is our new front office shipping out all the players that aren't my guys?
You tend to wonder, don't you? You tend to wonder. There's a couple things that are obviously in this trade that are eye-catching.
Well, let's break them down one at a time then.
Okay. All right, let's do that. So let's just say, for instance, Corey Coleman, you've watched this much camp, and you've come to the conclusion that Callaway and Higgins are ahead of Corey Coleman on the depth chart, so that would put Landry, Higgins, even though I don't know how you could do that because Higgins is really a slot guy. I would rather see Landry at slot as well than playing the outside, but Landry's been playing the outside. So, so you got Callaway, Landry, and Gordon, and let's just say Higgins. So that's even makes Corey Coleman wide receiver 5. Right, so typically you go, oh man, first round pick as wide receiver 4 or 5. Like, ugh, that's terrible. Like, he's expendable. Let's see if you can get something for him. Right, if you could get something for him, it would make sense. But you're getting a 7th round draft pick. So what's the point? And the reason what's the point? Because it's not like we have just a room of wide receivers that you can rely on week in and week out. Matter of fact, we have one guy in Callaway who didn't even play a game last year because he was kicked off his team at Florida. And look, he seems to be on the straight and narrow. I'm giving Callaway all the chance in the world, and I'm not, that he's the least of my worries. But then we have Mr. Josh Gordon, who's not even in camp, and he's consistently, if one thing that he's consistent at, that's being suspended. He's the most consistently suspended player in the NFL up to this point. And he's done a really good job of staying suspended. And
all
so
pro suspension king.
All pro suspension, right? And he's all pro when he plays. I mean, I don't want to get it wrong. Like, if Josh Gordon is here, thank God. Like, Josh Gordon is the real deal. But now we're relying on guys who are unreliable, and this goes back to the draft where we were talking about it, where I was like, hey, we could take a shot at Cortland Sutton. We took Nick Chubb there. We could have taken a shot at Cortland Sutton, a guy who's obviously way more dependable than what Josh Gordon has been up to this point and shown more dependability than what Antonio Callaway gave you in college. And I'm not saying don't draft Antonio Callaway, but when you draft Antonio Callaway, he's not insurance policy for your Josh Gordon. Because now you have 2 character concern guys sitting there. And yes, he has not messed up in the NFL. He has not, so I will give him the benefit of the doubt, but there's history there. It was multiple times he was in trouble at Florida. It seemed to be, most of it stems from, like, stealing things. He's getting a paycheck, so maybe we don't have to worry about that anymore. He can buy his own shit now, so. But,
yeah, he's young.
Yeah.
He's young and stupid.
And people do stupid shit. I'm not saying the guy's a bad guy. I'm just saying, like, he's had some troubles. There's some immaturity there, so. To me, Corey Coleman gave you that insurance policy that now you don't have. Even with Josh Gordon out and Corey Coleman still being there, I was thinking that we should add another wide receiver, a veteran guy. Mm-hmm. So now we get Corey Coleman, and we're creating a hole where we don't really need a hole for any reason. So that's why I'm a little worried, a little skeptical about this move here.
So the first point that we're using is sort of the depth chart. Maybe Corey Coleman's getting beat out.
That's fine.
A few of these guys, it's obvious the Browns have been throwing a ton of darts at wide receiver position. Janis was brought in, Ratley in the 6th round. Maybe he's playing better than expected. So if you're pushing Coleman down the board, he's a first-round pick that nobody wants to see sit on the bench. So you just do the right thing and you move on from him. This is, I guess, our first. That's our first spot there.
Well, okay? So even with that, even if you're getting essentially nothing back, so why, if that's the case, what's the point of getting rid of him? Why not just let him be at the bottom of the depth chart?
I think it has a lot to do with that he's basically, if he's just sitting on the bench not playing, he's a failed first-round draft pick, and there's no reason to have him sit. I think it's the same reason that they cut Osweiler last year. There's no reason not to just let him sit over there as a third quarterback, but at some point, let's just get this guy out of the uniform so nobody has to see him over there. And maybe that's what they're thinking here with Coleman.
That's if you had guys that you could actually rely on every single week, and you don't have that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. We've tried so many different things at the position. Why not give this kid one shot with a decent quarterback? He played well with McCown, and he played poorly with everybody else that, the other quarterback circus that we all sort of know about.
Yeah, and do you want to talk about, just with that point right there, do you want to talk about having the worst luck possible? You get drafted by the Browns, who have had what is arguably, this is not even arguable point. They literally have had the worst quarterback room for 2 years in the history of the NFL. The worst quarterback room, right? Like, there's never been a quarterback room this bad up until this point. And that's where Corey Coleman's been for 2 years with the shittiest quarterbacks you could possibly have. Yeah. He gets traded to what is arguably the worst quarterback room in the NFL this year. I mean, Corey Coleman, nobody's been shit on more than Corey Coleman has in his first 3 years of the NFL. That's tough. That's a tough hill to climb for Mr. Coleman. So, yeah, so that's my first point is why it's questionable is, hey, like, what are we doing? What's the point, right? What's the point here? What are we getting? What's the positive in the whole thing?
Well, I thought your first point was Coleman was falling down. I thought it was that the depth chart has sort of moved past Coleman and then he was expendable.
Yeah, okay, right. So in that case, I'm sorry, what was I saying?
Well, you're also saying even if Coleman's at the bottom of the depth chart, it doesn't hurt to keep him around. So I get it. Yeah. I mean, we're just talking about sort of the receivers we have here and where Coleman fits in. If he's not going to play, I guess you just send him away or cut him. Like, that's the other. It's obvious if Buffalo doesn't give you anything, you're going to cut him.
I mean, really, is that what we're going to do? Is cut him? That's why I just feel like this can't be based upon just talent alone. He's 24 years old. He's suffered two breaks of the hand 2 years in a row. Even when he's played, he's had good games, but a lot of them haven't been very good. But if you go back and you watch the tape, it's not like he's being thrown catchable balls. He's dropped a couple. Now, fans love to bring that up to you. A guy has 4 career drops, so that's pretty terrible. That's something he can't catch.
Mm-hmm. All right, so these are good points too. So let's move on to sort of this second part is injury concerns. He's had some hamstring issues. He did break his hand twice. Breaking your hand is sort of just unlucky, isn't it? And
absolutely.
He hasn't caught the ball well in the eyes of the public anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, you see that all the time. And this is what worries me about David Njoku this year is the fact that you're going to have a guy in there that's super raw, who's going to drop some passes, and people are just going to climb all over top of him and beat him down. And that's the rough thing. So Corey Coleman coming out was super raw. Corey Coleman ran 3 routes in college. Corey Coleman was going to take time to develop. The thing is, he got thrown to the fire right away. And I mean, he actually put up, he had 200 yards after the first 2 games, or near. It was like 170 yards or something like that after the first 2 games. And then he breaks his hand. I mean, it's just, and then you're out for 8 weeks. How are you supposed to get your momentum back, right?
Right. So it's just sort of lost 2 seasons. He's really played 1 season worth of football.
Right. And both of them been interrupted right in the middle of it. So I guess you could say he's as unreliable as Josh Gordon. Well, not that unreliable. But these are sort of like freak accident type breaks of the hand. So, it's just tough. I mean, injuries are going to happen. So injuries are going to happen with these guys as well. There's going to be guys on this roster at the wide receiver position that get injured this year. So every time somebody gets injured, we love to do that thing. 40% of football was injured last year. So it's going to happen. We as Browns fans need to understand people are going to get injured. It's okay. That's why you want to have the depth. That's why you want to keep an extra guy on your wide receiver list if you can.
That's the annoying part of the trade is just why move on.
Yeah, well, you got nothing. You got nothing in it.
We're trying to figure out why the depth chart, positioning, injuries, hands, and maybe the third point we could bring up is some off-field issues or slow learning the system, not understanding the position. Where do you want to go next here?
Yeah, well, I would say that it has everything to do with some off-the-field stuff that just the fans don't know about. Right. I think that's what this is all pointing at is he's not getting down the system. So Haley sees him as expendable. It seemed like even before Haley was here, they were talking about trade scenarios with him even before. So there's
Coleman's
other
had
things.
One foot out the door since the end of last year.
Yeah. So that's where this is where you tend to wonder, is he bad in the locker room? If he's bad in the locker room, then it's a good trade for the Browns just to get rid of him. It doesn't matter what you get back. Just get him out of the locker room if that's the case. We don't know that. We don't know what his personality is. If you look at on the field, I can't justify taking a conditional 7th round for what he's done. I mean, there's other receivers that are playing in this league that are not anywhere near him that where you're able to get better compensation for than a conditional 7th round. A 7th round pick is like 99% chance not even making a team. So if you're the Bills, you're going, hey, we're going to take a shot on a first round guy for a conditional 7th. Like, why not? What's the point of them not doing that? That's a good idea for them. For us, it's, we're looking at another first round pick that's just now being thrown away because either one, he doesn't get it, or the coaches aren't living up to their end of the bargain, coaching the kid up. Or the GM just maybe doesn't like him and wants to get his own guy. There could be some of that. Hey, I drafted these guys. These guys are going to make the team. Therefore, I don't have room for Coleman. This happens all the time. We talk about that here all the time. That, hey, the problem with switching over GMs, the problem with switching over coaches, is that all these people want to bring in their own guys, and then we're constantly cycling through players. We're constantly cycling through 3-4 to the 4-3. Oh, we're spread offense. No. Oh, now we're power run offense. No. It's just all these different things, and you have to go and find new replacement for all these new offenses and defenses we want to play. And
yeah, if we never get any kind of stability here, we're going to go through this again. Okay, let's say we lose 11, 12 games, and then they want to get rid of Hugh. Well, now we've got a whole other sort of, Hugh's guys now we got to move on from because the new coach is going to want some of his own guys. And
yeah,
at some point we have to get some stability in the front office or the coaching staff. And, maybe the whole problem is the dude up top who can't fucking make a hire if his life depended on it. I mean, he's been here for what? I don't even know how many dudes we've been through in the time he's been here.
Pilot.
He can't. He can't seem to hire properly. It's at some point this reflects poorly on you.
No, I mean that is true. You got to remember, Sashi didn't hire Hugh. Dorsey didn't hire Hugh. Hugh came before both of them.
Right.
So each guy was sort of stuck with Hugh. Hugh seems to be. I mean, we've changed the entire coaching staff besides Hugh. He's the constant here, right now. He's the one. Him and Jimmy are the constant here. Everybody else is new. So that's the scary thing to think about. But when you look at it, you knew Coleman was raw, and then you want to blame somebody. I mean, you got to coach him up better than that. You do. You have to.
Yeah, and it seemed like Landry was having a positive effect on the kid.
It did. It did.
That was one good thing that we were really liking about Landry is, taking some of these kids under his wing, teaching them how to be a pro and how to prepare and maybe learning a little bit out there in the process. That's what's so frustrating here, to just get nothing in return. We don't get to see him with a decent quarterback. We don't get to see this third year is when you sort of expect him to come into his own, which is kind of like a second year, but
right. So Ben Albright's on.
Makes no sense.
He's on. But Well, this is what might make a little bit more sense out of it, because Ben Albright's on Twitter right now tweeting about there's a lot more to this story. So there's no way this trade gets made for a 7th round pick based purely on what he's done on the field. There's just no way. Kid's 24. He hasn't been good. He hasn't lived up to first round potential. But dude, you're telling me the most you can get is a conditional 7th? There's more of a story. Albright's saying there is. He's saying when he can talk about it, he will. So I imagine down the line we're going to learn a little bit more about it. So if this is a addition by subtraction because Corey Coleman has some bad influence that whatever's happening in the locker room, or he's just not getting the playbook, he's not learning it. I mean, Haley was out there yelling at him one day, but that was about catching a ball. But you don't know if there's other things where he's just fed up, like Coleman's not getting it. So we'll see.
If Coleman was really good and he was productive the last 2 years, you could take some of his shitty locker room attitude, if that's what it is. But if he's just going to be buried on your depth chart, not playing, then there's no reason to keep him around with off-field issues or a shitty locker room attitude. So, in that case, again, now it starts to make sense, but maybe we don't know the whole story.
I've got to believe that's exactly what it is. When you look at the depth chart at the wide receiver position, you don't look at it and go, oh yeah, we can just easily give up one of these wide receivers. But when you think about Duke Johnson wanting to get more play in the slot, you think about Njoku and DeValve and the different things they can do by, splitting them out or putting them in the slot. You start to feel a little bit better about it. I think we're a little bit deeper than what just the wide receiver room alone lets makes it look, because you have these pass catchers. I don't even know if our guys are necessarily like those inline tight end guys. They're more pass catchers than they are really those inline blockers. That's definitely why we went out and got Darren Fells, is to be that inline blocker when we need him.
I think there was an analyst that mentioned that they had packages DeValve and Njoku on the field at the same time as well. So
they better
somebody else off. I guess you can't look at it as wide receiver / tight end. It's just putting these weapons into positions to do stuff, and Coleman becomes expendable because we don't have enough room for him on the field.
I mean, it could end up being like nothing because you don't even miss Coleman, because really you're going to have guys fill in. I honestly, watching Callaway play, I think Callaway really has something. Where I get a little worried about with Callaway is what I've already talked about with his character issues. Also, him just not playing last year. He's incredibly raw. I was out there the one day, and Haley's yelling at Callaway for running the wrong route. These are the things that's going to happen to a young player. And now you're putting a lot of pressure on a guy who might not need that extra pressure thrown onto his plate, and then you're asking him to play a little bit early. Now, we've got half of Brown's Twitter, more than half, saying, no way can you play Baker Mayfield day one. But you look on there and they're like, oh, we got Callaway, don't worry about it. Kid didn't even play football last year. So it doesn't make sense. And you're talking about Baker Mayfield, who is one of the most experienced quarterbacks to play in college football. And then, you can't play him right out the gate. You can't play him. Come on now. You can't. I don't know if you can make both those arguments with a straight face.
Well, it's Twitter, so you can just make any kind of arguments that you want without any freaking consequences at all.
Speaking of that, I see Daryl Ryder, our favorite. We haven't even talked. When's the last time we talked about Daryl Ryder?
I don't know. We sort of stopped complaining about media because. but
I mean, he's my favorite. He's my favorite because. It takes a special person to just pile on when the shit is like he just loves it. When he can pile on, he's going to pile on. So of course he was bringing up the Wentz trade, and then I even got a chance to throw his freezing cold hot take on there, where he talked about how much he loved the trade back in the day, and then last year he commented on what a failure it was, and the Browns are stupid for ever doing it. So. There's one guy. It's like if you're going to have a take, right, and you miss on that, it's just accept that it's bad that you lost. All right, I miss there. I messed up. I said something, and that's not the way it actually was. Don't try to act like you never wanted them to make that trade in the first place. That's just, come on now. But he was on there, and then Matt Miller hops on. I believe Matt Miller said, this guy was drafted before Michael Thomas. Okay, right? And to be fair to Matt Miller, Michael Thomas was on top of his board. So he had Michael Thomas at, I believe, 16th on his overall board, and he had Corey Coleman at 18th. So it was a ginormous 2-spot reach for Matt Miller that we actually took Corey Coleman where we did. God forbid. He had him at 18. We took him at 15. So 3-spot reach there.
Yeah, Matt Miller's had some fun taking shots at the Browns. I think
he loves it. He's so
much. I think he gets so much play on Twitter about it because Browns fans are we get a little hot under the collar. So you look at most of his tweets and they're mildly commented on. But boy, if he talks about the Browns, everybody's gets in there.
It becomes a troll fest, especially when it's a first round pick of any sort. Then everybody gets to bring that up. Oh, the first round. Yeah, we know. We're Browns fans, bro. You don't have to remind us. We've been here. We've been living this, my friend. Don't think that you're telling us something that we don't know. But Daryl Ryder, he's a special one though. We got to get him on, man. How do we get Daryl Ryder on the show?
I don't know. We're not blocked, so surprisingly.
Amazingly, we're not blocked. Yeah. I don't think I've ever said anything nice to him. I would almost love to know what Tony Groshi's take was of it today, but
I'm sure he's got. Yeah. Well, everyone's excited to pile on when first rounders don't work out in Cleveland. When you look across the board, first rounders don't work out in a lot of teams. It's just part of the process. You can't get all these right. Unfortunately for Coleman, he's not going to a great situation. So I don't know if he's we might not have a lot of coulda had him's because
that's probably a good thing for Browns fans.
I love the coulda had him's. I mean, that's my favorite part of Twitter.
You got that? You got the coulda had him. Michael Thomas coulda had him. Nobody mentions the 5 other there was 4 other wide receivers besides Corey Coleman that were drafted before him. Nobody mentions that the Redskins missed or the Texans or Minnesota badly missed. Everybody wants to, blow the GM out there in Minnesota. Rick Spielman. Oh, he's the greatest of all time. Laquan Treadwell there, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, he passed did he pass on Michael Thomas?
He did.
Unbelievable.
Can you believe it?
Could have had him.
Not one. Yeah, could have had him. Exactly. Not one mention of that from Matt Miller.
The whole thing gets so annoying of this. I get it. Our first round draft picks haven't done anything. We haven't won any games. So everything gets frustrating and there's no patience. And I hate thinking that our front office is moving on from this kid because it's not their guy. And we just, every time that part in the back of my head is like, fuck, not again.
Yeah, but that's the turnover. That's the turnover factor. And that could be. I think that, is going to have some play in this. But what it really looks like from the outside is there was a lot more to this story than what we know. I think, as time passes, we'll probably find out a little bit more and it might come a point where we go, oh, okay, that was actually a smart move. At first, it's almost like the Richardson trade where we traded him for a first-round pick, and everybody's like, what are we doing? We got nothing. That's the only guy we had on our team. And it ends up being a good pick, even though we squandered it. But it actually was a good trade at the time.
There's still some stuff to play out. And we did say, Coleman's, it's his make-or-break year. It was Lewis's make-or-break year. Now he's out for the season. It's probably Higgins' make-or-break year. If these guys are going to move forward with this team, they're all from the 2016 draft. So, there was always a chance Coleman wasn't going to make this team. We knew that.
Oh, sure. What do you think of Higgins feeling the Baker effect here?
Higgins is tearing it up with Mayfield.
Yeah. Yeah. So what if Coleman... It would have been better for Coleman to get demoted to second team, tear it up with Baker.
Let him go out there and play and see what you got.
Can we get into that real quick with the Baker thing? Because I was thinking about this. So Tyrod's been having a couple good games, or good weeks, or good days.
Yeah.
Good days here, right? He's been putting them together. So that's a good thing for anybody that is like, hey, let's give Baker time and let him sit behind and learn as much as he can, So if you're of that mindset, that you should be really happy. I'm happy for it because I just want the best guy to play. So if Tyrod's out there shredding defenses, put his ass out there. Let's do it, right? I want to win games. So Baker's going up against the first team defense. Is it better for Baker to learn with lesser talent going up against the better defense, or if he were to be first team going up against the second team defense with better players? You almost wonder, where are you learning more from him being the second and having to play with worse players against better competition right now? He's having to raise up the level of the players he's playing with here.
I don't think Baker's a guy that's going to get down on himself or have issues of confidence. So I think you can stick him out there with the third team offense against the first team defense, and you got to bring everybody up. You got to do it. You're not playing with the best players, and you're playing against our best. So good luck. I don't think Baker would get down on himself if, all right, this isn't working out. I think he would just take it as a challenge and work through it.
So that's what seemed to happen at the scrimmage, is that Baker went up against the first team defense, took his second teamers down the field, scored on the first possession, but then struggled in the next two possessions or something. But Tyrod maybe, I think, had a field goal first, but then took two more touchdowns against the second team. So I kind of like the fact that Tyrod's with the first teamers myself, and Baker's having to go up against the tougher competition with lesser players, which means he's got to play. Yeah. He's got to bring up the talent on his squad right now.
Yeah, he's got to make Higgins look like a starter.
Yeah, and I think, and look, I'm not going to hate on Higgins. I think Higgins can do some things. I don't think he's great. I think Higgins is a solid little wide receiver. But yeah, having Baker be able to find him and get the ball there, Higgins will catch it when you throw it to him. So yeah, I think Baker does that. I think Baker definitely raises up the talent on his side of the ball. It might not be the worst thing that Baker's having to go second team right now. He might be actually learning a little bit more.
To get back to the wide receivers, do you think the Browns now have to look at to bring in another player here, or I guess it all depends on what's happening with Gordon. Maybe they know more. You did say C.J. Board had a couple good days. Ratley's been playing okay. I don't know some of these other guys. Maybe we'll see them Thursday. Get everybody at least some playing time. We could see what some of these guys can do. But do we need to bring another guy in?
I guess they can wait till Thursday and we'll find out. I'm of the mindset that, you could definitely use some Josh Gordon insurance here. I feel like we are relying way too much on guys that have just proven to be unreliable. That's just setting you up for failure. And if you bring in, I know people don't want Dez to be anywhere near the building, but in my opinion, if you are able to get a guy like that, then so be it. Then you bring him on, because you can then put him outside on one side. You got Gordon outside on the other side, and you can put Landry back in the slot. Right now, it seems like we're going to get a lot more Landry on the outside. It almost seems like you're going to be getting a lot of Landry as your second outside receiver, opposite of Gordon. I don't know if I love that. I think I'd rather see him in the slot, working the underneath intermediate routes, stuff like that.
Yeah, I wonder how much they'll play on Thursday, because it's only game one. I know usually don't play a whole lot.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple
series. So it's of my opinion that I would bring a guy in right now, but I don't know exactly what's going on with Gordon. Obviously, the team should know way more than what we do, so they'd have a better feel on that.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm usually against signing a bunch of free agents. It's not great team building.
Yeah.
I'm fine with not bringing in Dez and trying to get something out of these younger kids that we have here already, but I'm worried about the receiver room. Not that I wasn't worried before. It was a little bit excited to see Corey this year, if he could do anything, and if he can't, then we'll throw another dart.
And maybe that they just didn't even need to get to that point. They've already seen enough,
Sure.
They might have already been like, okay, this is not working out the way we want it to, so let's just go ahead and make the move now.
Well, yeah, we have to assume that if they're willing to just throw him for a 7th round in 2 years, that he was on the cut list. He was getting cut and maybe getting cut soon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were getting rid of him. I get it.
It's a tough pill for Browns fans to swallow, but I mean, it is what it is. We've been talking about this a lot. Like, the best players need to be playing, and doesn't matter how you go about doing it, but you just got to get the best players out there one way or the other. If Callaway is, in their opinion, is better than Coleman, then that's what you do. That's what you do. I don't know if it justifies trading him for nothing, but I would rather have him as a backup. But that's what you got to do. Now, Zagura actually had the nerve to open up the show by saying this helps the Browns save some money. Now that
now
is a slap in our face,
right? Now
knowing that
everybody's worried about the fucking cap.
He makes like almost
about the cap
no money
until now.
Yeah, he makes almost no money. What does he make? Like $5 million over the next 2 years or something, which is peanuts,
maybe
compared to the $59 million that they have right now. $59 million. You can insult my intelligence in many ways, Nathan Zagura, but going to that damn salary cap that way, whew, that's a real slap in the face.
Well, he's got to put a positive spin. We're trying to positively spin this. I was way more apoplectic.
Yeah. I saw your tweet last night. You didn't seem too happy. I woke up. I went to bed early. I didn't even know this happened until I woke up, and I saw you were rage tweeting. So
just a little.
You were very angry.
It wasn't that bad, really.
What happened?
Yeah, I was. Well, it's because all the takes come out now. It's everyone's just waiting for this. That if this kid gets traded or cut, then Sashi's bad, or this coaching staff is bad. If I mean, at some point, like we just living in the past constantly, and then Matt Miller saying, with his thing that where he's got Corey rated as a first-round receiver.
The whole, number 18 overall. The whole point in acquiring all these draft picks is the fact that you're going to miss on a lot of them, right? You're going to, because that's what history shows us. Like, teams don't hit on a lot. If you hit on 50%, you're doing a hell of a job. So you're trying to build the foundation of your team. They're not all going to work out. I mean, it sucks, because this is such a valuable pick, number 15 overall. I think if we learn something, what I've learned is that when you're drafting that high, you need to get more of a sure thing. I think a lot of times in the NFL, they're betting too much on the traits alone, and they're not betting enough on the actual skills. Now, Corey Coleman, if you look at his numbers, unbelievable production at Baylor, but the skills were running in a straight line, or running a 9 route, or running a hitch or a slant, and that's all they did. They didn't learn how to be. He didn't learn how to be a wide receiver. So then he comes to the NFL, and he's incredibly raw, and he's got to learn routes that he's never even run. Right. So if you're going to draft, you can't take a guy like that in the first round. The value, it's too high of a risk compared to what his value is at the time. Like, does he have upside? Yes. There's the upside there. Athletically, ton of upside. The problem is the starting point is so low that it's going to take a long time to get there. If you don't have the patience to get there, or the job security, being a Brown GM, being a Browns GM, you don't have job security. You almost got to get this thing done right away. You don't have the patience to let this thing play out. That's kind of what I worry about with Njoku. You're going to probably have some rocky times with Njoku yet. It's going to take a couple years. It's the problem that we had with Kaiser. Kaiser had no business playing last year. Kaiser shouldn't be playing this year. Kaiser should have been sitting for 2 years. But you can't do that on a team that's this bad.
Well, it's almost like you can't do this in the NFL anymore. It's just you don't have enough time with these players on these rookie contracts to do a lot of working them into the system or coaching them up to do stuff that they didn't know how to do. It's really hard to develop players now. With just
it takes
lack of camp time, lack of practice time.
Yeah, and I think it takes a certain mental approach by the player. One, you have to be able to get that guy that just wants to be the best, won't settle for second best, and then it takes really a good. You have to your team has to be in a good spot where they don't have to play the guy right away. it's something like the Steelers can go ahead and take a shot on a guy who can develop as long as they're not having to force him into action right away. A lot of the good teams, when they draft a guy in the late first round or something, he's going to sit out. He's going to learn behind somebody for a season or two. Yeah. We haven't had that. We haven't been able to do that with our players. They get forced to into the action way too early, and sometimes it makes people hate the player that they are because they're so raw. It's tough, man.
If Corey had another, like a solid number one receiver in front of him,
yeah,
from year one or year two that he's learning from, but he's
that's a good point.
Basically the only one on the team. Like there's nobody to learn from. Those wide receivers were all young and none of them knew what they were doing. You had like Lewis and Higgins and Coleman out there. You tried to bring in a veteran. That didn't work out.
Well, that's a fault. That's a fault of Sashi Brown. So yeah. he blew an opportunity there to ensure, unless the guy has a different mindset. Like Corey Coleman doesn't really seem like the most alpha of guys. If you listen to him talk, I mean, he's pretty quiet. He seems shy. He almost seems like nervous. I don't know. You get a different feel when you listen to a guy like Landry talk.
Yeah,
yeah. See a guy who is out there. He's an alpha. He's doing shit for himself. He's blazing his own path. Corey Coleman seems like more of a guy that is going to watch other people and sort of get part of the group, to be the leader. I don't think he's a leader by any means. He doesn't act like it in any way that I've seen. So that's tough, man. I mean, that's the part that we don't get to evaluate when it comes to the draft. Like, we don't get to learn what kind of guys they are. We just get to see them play, and we can look at their testing and that kind of stuff. But that's a big portion of it, especially when you're talking about guys in the first round, because that's who you want to be the core foundation of your team. That's who you want to be the leaders. I think we absolutely got it right with Baker Mayfield. I think we absolutely got it right with Myles Garrett. Okay, well, these guys are drafted number one overall. That should be easy. The question is, what's Peppers going to be? What's Njoku going to be? I like the upside there, but Peppers looks like a good locker room guy. But I think that when you're looking at value in the first round, if we learn anything, it's like you got to have a complete package. The guy has to be more NFL ready than what Corey Coleman was.
Yeah, that's good for our process going forward and learning the draft and trying to figure out what the NFL can do as far as getting these players ready to play at the next level, coming from college systems that are basically set up for them to overproduce.
Yeah, and that's really what he did. I mean, it's tough to look at Baylor and go, well, where's all the wide receivers? They put up tons of numbers. Why isn't the NFL just littered with these guys?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of a sad day in the fact that we lose a guy who here we had so much hope for. But I guess it's a good day in the fact that you have to think the front office is looking at some of these guys that maybe we don't really know their names. Maybe CJ Board's ready to start doing something. Maybe we're going to find out Thursday night that there's a one or two wide receivers there that are just ready to break out. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Hey, you know what? There's bumps in the road to redemption, man. So don't just take it off. Not a clear path, my friend.
That's right. Good point. So, quick little pod today. We will be back on Friday. I think we're going to do, the game's Thursday night. We will wrap up the game and probably talk a little bit about Hard Knocks on Friday.
Can't wait.
We got anything else? We out of here.
Nah, I don't have anything else.
Our Twitter is at STS Podcasts. Our email is survivingtheseason@gmail.com. We still need more iTunes ratings, you fucks.
Yeah, come on. What's wrong with you?
We do appreciate the comments, feedback. Patreon at STS Podcast. Shout out to our executive producers over there. Thank you very much.
Walmart security. Thank you. Keeping me safe.
Walmart parking police.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Greg, the road to redemption. Tell them what we say.
Keep on surviving.